Hi everyone. Today, as I do my morning workouts, I normally have a YouTube channel on, either one booktube channel or one of the movie channels that I enjoy. This morning I listened to a new release from Robert Bellissimo at the movies, and he was giving his response to the recently released Sight and Sound 100 Greatest Films of All Time, which is divided into a critics list and a director's list. He focused in on the critics list. And so his approach was not a polemical approach. There's a lot of dismay over this new list because Chantal Akerman's Jeanne Dielman has made it to #1 in the poll. And so his approach was, what are the movies that I rewatched the most? What are my favorite movies that I cannot do without? I thought that was an interesting approach. And I'm going to take the same approach because I've never seen a Chantal Akerman movie, at least not all the way through. Now, years ago, I did try to watch Jeanne Dielman and a couple of other Akerman films, and I had a very difficult time engaging with them. So that's going to be one of my New Year's release, as Jeanne Dielman is playing on the Criterion Channel, and a bunch of other Chantal Akerman films as well. And also, I have to say that as I went through the 10 movies that I would choose off this list that I don't think I could live without, they're all from before 1980. I think the newest one is from 1974. And it's tough for me to see movies after 1980 as great as the movies before 1980. I have a very tough time with it, I admit it. I think there should be two lists. I think 1980 is, I'm just taking it sort of out of the air as some sort of dividing line, but I think there should be a list for the movies before 1980, which is the classical period of movies where directors were very much interested in aesthetic richness, and the movies after 1980. And sometimes they seem like a response, sometimes even a regurgitation of classic films. But that's just, probably my age, and I have seen so many of these movies in the movie theater, and some of them many times in a movie theater and then on physical releases in VHS days to today. So I'm not going to apologize for it, and maybe I should make a list of my 10 after 1980, I don't know. But I'm going to go the same way, and I'm not going to go into the top 10 movies, which is what everybody is looking at. Most of the articles that appear are looking at the top 10 films of all time, which is kind of a ridiculous. I'm not a list person anyways. I like to celebrate movies, and I like to be enthusiastic about movies. I don't like X is greater than Y is greater than Z. I never give ratings in my movie reviews. But I do have favorites. We all have favorites. So let's get to it. And I'm going to go backwards. I think Robert as well went backwards. And I will leave a link to Robert Bellissimo's list and to his channel. If you've never encountered his channel, you got to check it out and subscribe, because his channel is fantastic. So I'm going to go in order backwards as far as the list goes. So my first choice is going to be The Earrings of Madame D, which came in as number 90 in Sight and Sound's current poll, directed by Max Ophuls. Now, Ophuls is one of my favorite directors, and he has 3 big movies. The other 2, Letter from an Unknown Woman, that he made in Hollywood, and Lola Montez. Probably would not have been thought one of his big movies when it first came out, but to me, it has risen in my own personal estimation as the years go by. But this is just a magnificent love story. It stars the great Danielle Darrieux and Victoria De Sica, and also Charles Boyer. And it is a sort of triangle. Darrieux falls in love with Victoria De Sica, even though she's happily married to her husband, played by Charles Boyer. The star the three stars are fantastic, but also there is the Max Ophuls mood, the Max Ophuls tracking shot. It was said that Max rhymes with tracks. He was never happy unless he designed a very elaborate tracking shot. All his films are filled with them. And they're some of the most beautifully choreographed scenes I've ever seen in the movies. And his sort of romantic despair. Earrings of Madame D has all of that. It's just beautiful black and white cinematography. And Ophuls is not, to me, he is one of the more under-recognized, overlooked of all the great classic Hollywood directors. Number 84, this is Jean-Luc Godard's Pierrot le Fou. And I think I know Breathless is also on this list, much further down on this list, and also Contempt, La Mépris. But this is my favorite Jean-Luc Godard film, and it stars Jean-Paul Belmondo, Anna Karenina. It's a tribute film to Hollywood genres, the gangster film, the road film, the love story, the musical. Everything is covered in this film by Godard, and it has a playfulness to it that is simply unlike almost anything else that Godard made. It's colorful. The colors are just amazingly vivid. It's a tribute also to Technicolor and all its glories. But at heart, this is the story of the marriage of Jean-Luc Godard and Anna Karenina. They were already divorced by the time they made this movie, but this is kind of his, I don't know if you'd call it his tribute, but it is his autobiographical view of his marriage, of his relationship to Anna Karenina. Now, you have to know something about Jean-Luc Godard and Anna Karenina to see that, but it's there. But you don't even have to see that, because this is just this is a joyful film, and it's so unusual. And who would have thought in the 1960s that Chantal Akerman would crack the top 10 greatest films of all time, and Jean-Luc Godard would not be there? I don't think anybody would have probably believed that in the 1960s. At 78 comes Celine and Julie Go Boating. Anybody who watches my channel with any regularity knows this is one of my all-time favorite movies that I've been touting. It came out, I guess, almost 2 years ago now on the Criterion Blu-ray, directed by Jacques Rivette, and it's from 1974. So this is the newest of all the 10 films that I have on my list. Juliette Berthoud, Dominique Laubrière. It's very similar in some ways to Pierrot le Fou, because it has that playfulness and that mystery and what is it all about. And it was Summertime in Paris, a movie that Rivette and I believe Juliette Berthoud were about to make, and it fell through, and they wanted to make a movie, so they all got together. It was sort of a collaboration. It's based on Henry James' story. It has an alternate world, an alternate universe that these two who don't know each other at the beginning of the movie and then become fast friends, and they enter an alternate universe where a little girl is in danger in a mansion in which nobody actually lives there anymore, but through the magic of movies, the magic of some sort of pill they take, they enter this alternate universe in order to save this little girl from the dangers that they believe she is under. So just another great. I think I've seen this about 6 times now since it came out. It's a 3-hour movie. Also has one of the great commentaries of all time by Adrian Martin. Then at number 75 came in Sansho the Bailiff, and this is a Japanese film directed by Kenji Mitsuguchi. I think it is from 1954. Mitsuguchi was once considered one of the top 3, along with Kurosawa and Yasujiro Ozu. In fact, Ozu came to prominence in the U.S. probably up into the 70s. So before Ozu's popularity arose in the U.S., Mizoguchi was much more highly rated. But he is a very austere filmmaker, very classical. He generally makes films about the problems that women have in Japanese society, historically and contemporary. Sansho the Bailiff, though, is somewhat different. It is a story. It's set in medieval times, but it's a story of a lord who goes out of favor with the shogun, and his family is separated. And the children, he has two young children, a boy and a girl. They get separated not only from their father, but also from their mother. And then they grow up haunted by what happened to their mother. The boy becomes Sansho the Bailiff. He has great leadership skills, organizational skills, just like his father. And then the film in the final third is his search for his mother. And great films, I think, should have great endings, or at least great closing passages. And Sansho the Bailiff, I believe, has one of the really absolutely great closing passages. There is no picture in this booklet from Sansho the Bailiff, but of this concluding sequence in which we have the mother-child reunion that comes to pass, and it's one of the most moving sequences I've ever seen in film. And then at number 72, we have La Avventura, Michelangelo Antonioni's 1960 movie that caused quite a stir amongst critics in 1960. I believe this was in the top 10, maybe even the top 5 of the 1962 Sight and Sound poll. So it's now fallen down to number 72. And Monica Vitti, Gabrielle Frazzetti, a young woman disappears. Monica Vitti's best friend disappears on a remote island, a Greek island, and in which there are no inhabitants. They can't figure out where she is. They go on a trip. Gabrielle and Frazzetti, who is this woman's fiance, and Monica Vitti go on a trip to find her, search through Sicily. It's about the weakness of men and the strength of women, which is a common theme in Michelangelo Antonioni's movies. It's a long movie. It's absolutely gorgeous. And unbelievably enough, I think I've seen this movie more times than any of the movies on this list. Next up is number 63, The Third Man, directed by Carol Reed, starring Joseph Cotten, Alida Valli, and of course Orson Welles in the famous sewer scenes, based on a story by Graham Greene. It has some of the most amazing scenes in film history, memorable. The Ferris wheel scene between Cotten and Orson Welles, and of course the iconic scenes in the sewer where Welles is being pursued on different levels of the sewer, and of course the great Alida Valli. And talking about endings, final shots. Is this the greatest final shot in the history of movies, where Joseph Cotten walks down a path, or Alida Valli walks down a path? Joseph Cotten is waiting in the foreground for her to approach. He's smoking a cigarette. I won't spoil the rest, but it's a fantastic final shot. I think only the final shot in Vertigo, I would say, is up there with the final shot of any movie I've ever seen in cinema. 54 is The Apartment, a comedy drama. There's hardly any comedies on this 100 list. I know Chaplin is there. Was Keaton there? Keaton must have been there somewhere, but you know, there's no Preston Sturges. Billy Wilder's Some Like It Hot is there, but this is the movie of Billy Wilder's that I've watched more than any other Wilder by far. There's nothing much to say about it. It's a popular movie with lots of people. and Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine and Fred McMurray. And, you know, how do you become a mensch? You want to know how to become a mensch? Watch this film, because it's still relevant. How much are you going to give up of yourself to get ahead in life, to be a success? I have to have Hitchcock here. Now, I'm going to choose the movie that came out in at number 38. This is Rear Window. Jimmy Stewart, the incredibly beautiful Grace Kelly, and now Vertigo fell from 1 to 2, and I would have to say, if I was being if I was a critic, and I had the you know, I had credibility as a film critic, I would probably choose Vertigo as Hitchcock's greatest artistic achievement, and perhaps the greatest artistic achievement in cinema. I wouldn't argue with that. But it's a painful movie to get through, Vertigo. Rear Window, on the other hand, is so much fun, and it's all about cinema. It's about Jimmy Stewart, it's about the beauty of Grace Kelly, it's about how Hitchcock viewed women, and especially as what kind of woman he wanted in his films as a voyeur. This is a film that exists on many different levels, aesthetically rich and thematically rich, and it's about our relationship to the movies as well. You can watch Rear Window as many other Hitchcock films and give them all different readings. Every time you see them, there's something else there to find. And then at 21, we have Late Spring. So the Ozu movie that cracked the top 10 is Tokyo Story. My money has always been on Late Spring. It's got Setsuka Hara, who's also in Tokyo Story, Sachio Ryo, who's also in Tokyo Story. But this is the father-daughter relationship of all time. I mean, this is, how do you give up your daughter? You have no one else in the world. She doesn't want to give up her relationship with her father. It's so beautifully, Hara is just so beautiful and so quiet. You know, Ozu's films are so quiet. Sachio Ryo as the father, and you know, it's just so evocative of the bittersweetness of life. Ozu was great at the bittersweetness of life. And then lastly, that came in at number 13, was The Rules of the Game by Jean Renoir. And I believe in the 62 poll, this came in, maybe the 72 poll, I think it was second in some of the polls to Citizen Kane. It's now dropped down to number 13. But this is just a marvelous film. It wasn't seen in the U.S. It was a 1939 film. It wasn't seen in the U.S. until I think the 1960s, maybe even the 70s, where the restored version was finally released. Renoir's portrait of Europe on the cusp of war. It's a delightful comedy. It's a tragedy as well, and it has the sense of the kind of aesthetic beauty that's very particular to Jean Renoir, who is also not only directs the film, but he is one of the crucial characters in the film, and it involves a party, a sort of weekend in the party where all these rich people, celebrities, heroes come. There's love affairs galore. It becomes a furious farce before it finally ends in a kind of tragedy. And you can't help but view this film in the context of the coming war, of Europe collapsing before the onslaught of the Nazis and Adolf Hitler. So those are the 10 that I chose. I think they're all different than what Robert Bellissimo chose. So if there are films on this list that you really love and you want to put that in the comments, I really would appreciate it. There's a lot of other great films in here to celebrate. So I look at this list more as a celebration rather than, oh, let's have some polemical discussion, argument. To me, it's a celebration of cinema. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments, again, are always welcome. Take care.